start spiking and everything early on, it's going to be difficult by the end to pull.
What about the nutrition in the bottle?
So I'm just going to give you, like, so I was just say what I truly believe, so I'm just going to tell you what I believe, and you might not like that, but so I think it's better, and I've always been taught on all the teams that I was on to drink your fluids and eat your macros and your sodium, right? So like tonight, like we know we're going to be sweaty tomorrow. We know it's going to be hot. So today and this afternoon and tonight, you guys should be like putting the salt on, having kind of salty foods. And then tomorrow, I mean, from my experience, we always use like light on the electrolyte drinks, so light on the nutrition drinks. The reason for that is a lot of that stuff fills you up, kind of causes some gas, and it also sort of irritates your stomach. So it gives you this false sense of fullness, and it also disrupts your gut. Because at the end of the day, like you can eat way more salt, you can eat way more carbs and food, and protein and fats than you can drink, obviously. So, and I think also when you have the mix in your bottle, it sort of takes away from you drinking as much, right? Because it's harder to drink as much with the mix. So I would recommend, like, I wouldn't change anything for tomorrow, but moving forward, if you're one of those folks that has a lot of your calories and your carbs and everything in the bottle, I might think about switching it to in your pockets. But obviously it's much more difficult, but it's doable. All right, everyone's cool on that? All right, now the next thing I think that's super important for you guys to think about tomorrow is execution. So sort of the last part of this whole thing. Well, we didn't really talk about hydration. We got a good question, but hydration, I think 1 bottle every hour is like sort of the standard. But that's tough, really tough tomorrow, especially with the feed zones and everything split up. So what I'm going to do tomorrow is I'm going to bring 2 bottles on my bike and then 1 bottle in my jersey. So that's what my competitor did last week that smoked me. So that's what I'm going to do. But it's a great idea, right? Like, it's not that much extra weight to have a small bottle in your jersey pocket, and 3 is better than 2, right? So I think that's a good strategy. If you're planning on stopping at all the rest stops, it's probably not super necessary. But I would go more aggressive with your hydration tomorrow than normal. It's going to be hot. And a good rule of thumb too is you kind of want to be super topped off going into like the last hour and a half, 2 hours of the event. So like when I was racing, we would hit a lot of those final mountains like Alpe d'Huez, and a lot of these climbs take an hour to get up, right? Racing. So, but before this last hour, we would have to fight for position for 30 minutes before you would get to the last effort up the climb. So that last hour and a half, 2 hours, I wanted to have everything topped off. So full hydration, full nutrition, because knowing that last part, I'm not going to be able to get a whole lot. I think the same goes for you guys tomorrow, right? You guys are going to want to bring it home strong, close out your ride really well. So kind of think of that as like, okay, when I get to those last 2 climbs, like that's really my go time, right? So I'm totally topped off, I feel really good, I'm super full, super well hydrated. I'm just going to now empty the tank from here to the finish. I think a lot of people do the opposite of that, right? A lot of us kind of get to those points and then we say, okay, gosh, I can't wait for the next feed zone. I'm totally jacked up. I'm going to rest for a while. So I think try to think of those first feed zones and the first feeds as ultra important, and that last part of the course just super empty the tank and come all the way to the finish. You go as deep as possible. There. Okay. So execution. So I don't want to get too crazy into execution. I don't want to make it too complicated for you guys. But I think we have a good opportunity, since we're going to go right after this too, to teach you guys a couple things, and then we can kind of practice them out on the road. All right, first thing, cadence and execution. How many people know how to use different cadences? Do you guys train with different cadences? A bunch of us? Okay. So I think tomorrow, a good rule of thumb on the climbs is steeper parts of the climbs use a lower cadence on the steeper parts of the climbs. All right? On the transitions from steep to shallow, so that happens on every roller, and that happens in the middle of these climbs, because what's really cool about 6-gap and 3-gap is a lot of the climbs aren't totally perfect, smooth gradients, right? There's a lot of fluctuation in the steepness. So that's actually like really high-level cycling, is learning how to use those changes in gradient to build and maintain momentum. So how we're going to do that is on the steeper parts, like I just said, we're going to use a lower cadence. And the reason why we use a lower cadence is to help us stay in control of our effort. Because what happens with a lot of people is when they get to the steeper parts, they think, well, I have to maintain my speed and my cadence. So they keep the same one going into the steep part of the course, but what happens? They shoot straight through all their zones because the universe says, no, I'm sorry, this thing's 15%, you cannot ride at 90 RPMs up this, right? Unless you're doing a wheelie off in, a knack off the top of the mountain. Not possible. So if you go with a slower cadence on the steeper parts, it helps you control your effort, control your breathing, control your muscular output. But this is going to be challenging, right? Because you might tip over. So what do you do for that? Anyone have any guesses? So we're on the steep parts of the climbs tomorrow. Low cadence, so we're going slower, but we're keeping our respiration in check. What do we do to make it easier to go slower on the climb? Does anyone have any ideas? Stand. We can stand, right? Because when you stand, you get over the front of your bike. But when you're over the front of your bike, your center of gravity is in the right spot. Because what happens when you're on a flat road, your center of gravity is like this. But now your bike goes like this on the steep thing. So most of us are like this. So now what's happening? Our center of gravity is back here. So that makes our bike want to go like this. So if we change our center of gravity to the top by standing up and we're over our front hub, now it's much easier to control our bike going slower on a steep gradient. When you're doing that, guys, what's really, really important is that you bring your elbows in. So steep climbs tomorrow, get forward on your bike, and if you can stand up, do it. If you can't, just move your chin over your front hub. But bring your elbows in. So when you bring your elbows in, you're locking your core. When you lock your core, you're connecting your arms to your pedals. Everything in between, every effort that you do is going directly into the bike or directly into your hands, right? What controls your hands when you're on what controls your bike where you're going on the road? Your arms. What controls how fast you go up the hill? Your legs. The two need to be talking. They need to be communicating, and that's what happens to a lot of people is they're not. First the hands start going, right? They start swerving, they can't control. And then the legs start giving up, right? They're not pushing. The two aren't going together. Straight line is always faster up a steep hill, right? So forward on the bike, bring the elbows in to lock and control between the hands and the feet. And that should help you guys get up the steep parts of the climbs. High cadence tomorrow is best to use on the transitions between steeper and shallower. So on the steep parts, we're going to use lower cadence. And when it transitions from steep to shallow, we're going to shift to an easier gear. We're going to accelerate just a little bit to get up and over into the flatter parts, and then we're going to re-downshift. Okay? Does that make sense? So I call this technique surfing the terrain. So you want to think of the terrain like a wave. So the steep parts of the climb you're holding back, over the tops you're accelerating with a higher cadence, and then into the downhills, into the flatter parts, lower cadence, or back to a lower cadence. So I hope I know that's a pretty complicated thing. I thought we could practice it when we go ride because we have some good rollers and stuff, so I can show you guys a little bit how to do that. But it's super important tomorrow to not do the opposite. Don't look at the steep parts as like I have to go as hard as I can up these, and don't look at the flat bits right as I come completely off the gas, right? Does that make sense? I know it's a little confusing. Yeah, that's great. So I think like on the steep speed parts, like anywhere between 50 to 70 or something like that. Trying to, I mean 50 is on the low end, but if it's really steep like a lot of the ones tomorrow, that's just reality. And then when you transition, like the high would be like 80 or 90, and then back to like 70, 75 on the flatter parts. Because guys, a lower cadence is going to give you more torque and it's going to help drive the bike forward, right? And tomorrow is kind of more of an endurance game, so we're not going to be throwing a lot of attacks and a lot of surges. So if we can keep that torque, if we can keep that chain tension on, we want to focus that. So kind of think of your rear cassette and think of the chain like going on each tooth of the cassette. And today when you're riding, like try it. Like when you do high cadence, feel how that chain tension goes down. And then when you have the lower cadence, it's easier to get full engagement with each link of the chain. And when that's happening, that means it's driving you forward. So when you're climbing and you're riding those rollers, that's what you want to think about, right? You got that? All right, next part of execution is standing. How many people are super comfortable in standing and know when to stand? When are good times to stand besides when it gets steep? When your back feels tight, when your butt hurts. Okay.
Typically, I like to do it when I want to increase my cadence.
Yeah.
A little bit back now.
Out of corners.
Huh?
Out of corners.
Out of the corners. So guys, I want you to think of standing in two perspectives, right? One, accelerating. Two, decelerating. So you can use standing to slow down, because you can use your upper body as a sail. You can use standing to speed up, because you can use your body weight and add more force into the cranks. So the crank is like a lever, right? So like say this is a crank, this is the pedal. Right here is where you push on the lever, right? So we're pushing in a circle. With circular force is called torque. So that force that we're putting on our pedals, each point during the pedal stroke, is ultimately what sends you forward. So when you stand, you get to add more than the force that you're putting into your pedal from just your leg. You also get to add your entire body weight into it. So that's super badass. The way to do that is you get yourself forward on your bike. So a lot of people, when they stand up, they tend to stand straight up. So they're almost perpendicular over their bike, over their seat. You want to go forward over the front of the bike. The reason for that is so you're able to drop your body weight into each downstroke, and then you're able to pull each upstroke up at a good angle with your hamstrings, your calves, and your glutes.
Some people say when you stand, you should go kind of back and forth, or should you try and just stay straight? I've heard both.
So that's all personal preference, but like, as you become more experienced with standing, I think that sway just comes into it. Because right, like we all remember as kids, and I call this the slither. Like you can actually make your bike go forward if you just shimmy your bike, right? Like we've all tried that before, like almost come to a complete stop and keep going. You do like the slither, just shimmy your bike forward. So when you're standing, it just gives you an awesome opportunity to add a little bit more swagger into your pedal stroke, and then you can get into more shimmy. So the slither or the shimmy that you see when people stand, right? That's just helping you go faster, but I don't think it's like making it more efficient. I think it's just a way to do it. So I wouldn't obsess over it. But guys, so when you're standing, you accelerate. The key part of that is getting out of the saddle and going forward, right? So you almost want to think of yourself as like a lunge. When you're getting out of the saddle to accelerate, you're almost pulling your body weight up as you're pushing your leg down. So it's almost like a lever, right? And you're pulling and pushing at the same time. So we can work on that when we get outside. But I really want you guys to think of standing in those two perspectives. Speeding up by lifting your body weight up and pushing down and getting forward on your bike when you're standing to accelerate, or to slow down to stretch your back, or get out or spend some time stretching your hamstrings or whatever before sections that we're going to stop pedaling. We see a lot of times where people will just sprint into corners, slam on their